In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. So that reading from the Gospel of Mark, I was trying to count it up just that last second. I don't know if I said watch 3 times in that passage or 4 times. It's a lot of times in a small reading to say watch and pray, keep watch. You know, it's like the man going on the journey, he leaves all the servants in charge and he says to the doorkeeper, watch. And Jesus is making the strong point, we need to watch. And what are we watching for? Well, we're watching against falling into sin. We had the epistle reading about, that there is no sin. We're keeping watch so we don't fall into sin. And we're keeping watch on when the Lord comes to us. When we're watching and praying, there's there's the praying, you could say, is the reading of the words of the prayer book, and watching is noetically just our mind is awake. We're not sleepwalking through our prayers. We're awake and watching. So I want to read, maybe you did this already, but I want to read very briefly about our Holy Father Martinian, who was a watcher and has a lot to teach us. It's just a paragraph here, not a very long one even. The life of this saint is wonderful beyond measure and worth reading in full. What did he not endure to fulfill the law of God? At the age of 18, he went off into a mountain in Cappadocia called the Ark, and there spent 25 years in fasting, vigils, and prayer, and struggling with manifold temptations. When a woman came to tempt him, and he saw that he would fall into sin with her, and it doesn't say here, but the story is that it was raining. She knew of his virtue. She decided to test it, as the way the other life reads. She wanted to test his virtue. So it was raining. She knocked on the door of his little cell in the mountain and said, "It's raining, you have to let me in." He's like, "I'm not letting you in. You have to let me in. It's storming out here. Let me in." So he does, and she begins to tempt him, and he started a fire in his, cell, to keep warm or whatever that he might normally do. Except it says that he leapt barefoot into the fire and stood in it until the pain brought forth tears from his eyes, and he had killed the lust within himself. She had also converted because of this dramatic action of his efforts to not fall into sin with her. And he goes on to say, when other temptations arose, he fled to a lonely rock in the sea and lived there. When, though, in a shipwreck, a woman swam to the rock, he leapt into the sea, intending to drown himself, but a dolphin took him upon its back and brought him by God's providence to the shore. He then decided to make nowhere his permanent home, but to travel incessantly. Thus he passed through 164 towns in 2 years, exhorting and advising the people. He had finally arrived in Athens, where he died in 422. So we have to be careful not to read this, well, one, probably not to imitate it exactly, but to have the same fervor to avoid sin and to not give in so easily to sin and do what's necessary. I could imagine all of us going to Tippytown Lake and throwing our phones in the lake. This would match this level, and I mean, it wouldn't match the level actually at all, but it would at least give you a vision of, what's at stake, what am I willing to do, to avoid falling into temptation. Saint Martinian is a great saint for us. Someone who's just hungering for the Lord, and it seemed like temptations just found their way to him, even though he had gone away to avoid those things. Shipwrecks and people with evil intent. The woman wanted to test his virtue, but he never gave in. He fought that. So let us watch. Let's keep our eyes open and not fall into sin, and just spend the whole day watching and praying with the Lord, looking for when he shows up, which is probably going to be, in 2 ways, and I'll end with this. In 2 ways. On the one hand, it's when we're praying, we're just noetically, with our minds prayerful, waiting for him. And secondarily, like through the people that come to us, through the day, call us, or we run into, or strangers, or family, and just, looking for what the Lord is doing in that interaction, what He's asked of us, to pray for them, to love them, to sacrifice for them, give ourselves for them. So, through the prayers of Saint Martinian and all the saints, in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.